And they'd had the Derbyshire Wildlife Trust with their Wilder Derbyshire project had been and told the farmers what they should do and how they should do it. The trust has no land in that area, and at the end of it, it's a bit like George Monbiot talking to the Cumbrian farmers and commoners. No one heckled, there was just silence. And I went along and sort of said, look, I work with farmers and I work with conservationists, but I don't see farming as the problem. I think farming is the solution, and we need to work together. And I did some stuff with the Worcestershire Wildlife Trust where I went to talk about shadow woods, and I'd talked about what had happened in the Peak District and how we discovered these areas on the heavily overgrazed moorlands. And I'd been bemoaning the fact that the moors in the 1960s and 70s were almost devoid of heather. I mean, round Fox House and those areas, along the Longshore Estate, there was just no heather on it because they were being grazed in the summer and then they were being regrazed with moor sheep from the northern areas put on there in the winter. Now, the night before, we'd been taken round this fantastic estate by one of the local farmers who owned about 1,000 acres. And he was saying how he'd become a very successful farmer, but at the end of his career, he was now in his 70s, he thought what he's handing on to his kids is just terrible. It's just destroyed the countryside. So he's then set out to put in new hedges, put in meadows, created new woodlands, created new wetlands. I mean, it's fantastic. He's just doing it all by himself. So we'd walk around this and he said, you know your moorland in the Peak District? That was me. He said, I'm terribly sorry. We had a family farm at Hayfield. And we used to put our sheep on the southern moors in the winter. And it's just what the grant system made us do, because it's what they called hill sheep subsidies, and you got paid for the number of sheep, not for what you produced, which is just crazy. And he said that's just what we did, and I'm terribly sorry. And I think one of the issues with farming, I think there are big issues between farming and conservation, in that very often conservationists don't understand farming. And farming has a certain view of conservation. And really, the two should be part of the same thing. So we need to recognise the unique contributions of all the key stakeholders to this. Yeah. And farmers are really at the core of delivering these future visions. What farmers have done in the late 20th century is to deliver cheap food, which is what we, the community, we, the government, we, the decision makers, the taxpayers, have demanded. And I think that means there's a problem that we've turned away when the technology or the approaches have damaged the environment, because we would rather have cheap food in the supermarket. And I think there are huge issues, not just about the price of food. I'm not saying food should be a lot more expensive, but the farmer should be paid a lot more for what they produce. And they are hidebound by the supermarket chains and the others, and they often don't get a fair deal. So, and I've got friends who are upland sheep farmers, and I know the stresses that they are often under. So we need a system which is much more reflective, much fairer, and recognises the unique contributions of all those people, the conservation managers, the farmers, etc., to delivering this more holistic vision. And the Atlantic rainforest is not just about trees, it's about everything within that landscape matrix. And again, this is something that we find difficult to understand, that if you look at the history, what you have in history are pulses, mosaics, pulsing of open land, of tree cover, of removal of trees, of pasture, of moorland, of things change over the centuries, and they pulse and they flex and they flux. But we tend to put everything into boxes with boundaries, fixed boundaries, and we apply grants in that way. And that's a fundamental problem. We should be applying grants for process, not product. So you actually allow farmers more flexibility, more fluidity to deliver a landscape approach. We tend to have systems that deliver numbers of biodiversity, and I think that's fundamentally flawed. That can help you judge the quality of the landscape, but what you're looking for is a more fluid, more holistic, more flexible landscape output. And farmers, to me, when I talk to farming groups, I always say, well, you guys, you're the answer to the problems. And it is a big issue. It's a political issue as well, because I don't think there are many politicians at present who understand farming and food production. And conservation and the environment and food production are all one big bundle that we need to look at together. And we are an island, and we are dependent on food imports to a very, very unhealthy degree. And food security is something that I do not hear being debated in the media or in politics at the present. And, I know of farmers who tragically have taken their own lives because of the pressures of what they're under. And it's absolutely distressing. And we shouldn't be in that situation. We should have a system that works for everybody. And I've talked to farmers in Cumbria who are using wool to produce peat substitutes and things like that. And I did work on the Cumbria Bog Life project, which is bringing lots of different people together. And that's what we need to do, not have farmers over here, politicians over here telling all of us what to do, and conservation over here. It doesn't work like that. It's not healthy. And the farmers are part of that rural community. The tourists come here, but one of the misunderstandings, I think, is that we had this at the Peak District. People said, oh, well, we don't need farming, we can get rid of the farmers, we can rewire the Peak District and it'll be powered by tourism. Well, tourists come to engage with a traditional rural community. They don't come to somewhere that's been an abandoned landscape. Yeah, we want it wilder, we want the experience, but they also want to stay at a farm, eat at a farm B&B, go to a restaurant or cafe that's supplied by the local farm. And the National Trust in the Lake District have been at the centre of this. They've been brilliant, from the plate from the farm to the plate, type the field to the plate. That's the way forward, but we're still not doing it enough, and I don't think we make the political message loud enough. I mean, one of the things with the farmers is that they need to be remunerated for doing some of this work. So they need to see an incentive to make their livelihood more sustainable. Because upland farms are just, they're on the cusp. Yeah. And you go to the lowlands and they're all multimillionaires. I think farmers need to be fairly remunerated or compensated, paid, incentivised to do what we want to do. And one of the other things which people tend to forget, and I've talked to lots of farmers about this, and I had students doing projects on it, farmers want to farm. That's what they are. They are not custodians of the countryside. That's a side issue. Yes, they are, but they are there because they're farmers, and they're often, I've had arguments with people at the Peak District. We've got 6 generations of farming families who are now leaving the land. Now that's actually 6 generations worth of personal knowledge of those landscapes, and commitment to them. And when you talk to farmers, especially upland farmers, they want to farm. That's the end of it. So we need to find a way that they can farm and enhance nature, they can farm and capture carbon, they can slow the flow, they can provide these wonderful tourism landscapes, they can power the local economy, but they are farmers at the end of it. And they can help deliver the temperate rainforest. It's just giving them a system that works where they can be part of it. So not that the forest is a threat to them, their community, their livelihood. They are the community, which people tend to forget about. It's really important. These people have lived there, their families have lived there, and they care about it. And the danger is that we're coming along saying, right, we don't need you anymore, this is all going to be trees. Well, no, it's not. It's a mosaic. and they are part of that, and they have to be, they have to have a robust, sustainable and resilient economic incentive to be part of it and to deliver it. So, yeah.
Yeah.